Where is the Holy Lance? If the Russians get it, they will be the masters of Europe. Wow. I mean, just imagine the sheer frantic terror behind those words. It sounds like the climax of some crazy Hollywood blockbuster, right? An ancient relic packed with world-conquering power, fought over by empires right on the brink of total destruction. But this isn't fiction. This is the lingering modern myth of the Holy Lance. It's a weapon that's literally captured the frantic imaginations of people for over 1,000 years. So what is it about this specific spear that commands such intense, dramatic, world-ending stakes?
Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a look at the Holy Lance, uncovering medieval political propaganda. Okay, let's dive into this. We're gonna completely strip away those wild modern legends and really dig into the actual historical reality of this weapon, guided by a really dense, fascinating academic study by Howard L. Adelson. Now, the modern claims surrounding this object, they are absolutely wild. I mean, there are legends that back in 1914, the German Emperor, Wilhelm II, wanted a copy of it carried in front of him as this ultimate symbol of world dominion. There are even rumors that Hitler was obsessed with it, treating it like a talisman of victory, which is actually what led to that frantic quote about the Russians we just started with. Now, the author notes that these are, of course, just legends, they're modern inventions, but they absolutely prove one thing. The hold this symbol has on human emotion is incredibly powerful, and to understand why, we literally have to travel all the way back to the 10th century.
Right. So to understand the lance's true power, we first have to understand the massive political crisis happening in Germany during the 10th and 11th centuries. It was this huge ideological conflict over exactly how a king gets chosen. On one side, you had the ancient Germanic and clerical concept of an elected monarchy. This was basically the idea that a king should be chosen based on his talent, his political and military skills, and his divine duty. But on the exact opposite side, you had hereditary right. This was the fierce desire of reigning monarchs, specifically the Ottonian dynasty, to pass absolute power directly down to their sons, just by royal bloodline.
The church, however, well, they had some very strong opinions about this. Church leaders actively opposed succession based purely on royal blood. I mean, they were absolutely terrified of incompetent minors or illegitimate sons just taking the throne simply because of their DNA. Instead, they demanded a theocratic monarchy. In their view, the royal office was a duty given by God, so the ruler had to be morally capable and rule according to divine law. Basically, they favored suitability over kin right. So think about it. If you're king and you want to guarantee your son takes the throne after you, no matter what the church or the nobility thinks, you need a trump card. You need something undeniably divine.
Enter King Henry I of Germany. According to the 10th century historian Liutprand of Cremona, Henry heard a rumor. He heard that the Burgundian king, Rudolf I, possessed a holy lance that supposedly contained a literal nail from the crucifixion of Christ, a relic that guaranteed eternal victory. Naturally, Henry decided he absolutely had to have it. And how exactly does a 10th century king negotiate? Well, it's actually kind of dark humor. Henry essentially mafia-styled the Burgundian king. Step 1, he demanded the incredibly precious relic. Step 2, he offered massive gifts of gold and silver. But, just in case Rudolf wasn't super interested in selling his most sacred possession, Henry added Step 3. He explicitly threatened to ravage the entire kingdom of Burgundy with slaughter and fire until Rudolf handed it over. And shocker, Rudolf took the gold. So Henry gets his victory-giving lance. But here's a vital clue hidden in Liutprand of Cremona's historical record. When Henry died, Liutprand writes this exact Latin phrase, "Vuum dissetings cum regno simul hereditario dereliquit," which translates to, dying, he left the lance, together with his kingdom, by hereditary right to his son Otto. Guys, this is massive. This is the very first time the Holy Lance appears in a historical context directly connected to a dispute over a king's hereditary right to rule. And that dispute violently boiled over at the Battle of Burton in 939 AD. Now, this wasn't just some minor border skirmish. This was the absolute narrative climax for the Ottonian dynasty. The newly crowned Otto the Great, holding his father's kingdom and his father's Holy Lance, suddenly faced a massive, kingdom-shaking rebellion. And the prime mover behind this rebellion? His very own younger brother, Henry. Let's break down this intense sibling rivalry for a second, because it perfectly captures that core ideological conflict we talked about earlier. Otto was the older brother. He was selected by their father, and he had the Holy Lance in his possession. But his younger brother Henry had a very specific and honestly pretty potent argument. Henry was natus in alla regale, which means born in the royal hall. He was born after their father had actually ascended the throne, making him purple-born. Otto, on the other hand, was born before their father was king. So in Henry's mind, his royal status was purer. His claim to the throne was stronger. He was literally fighting to prove that his blood was the true royal blood.
The tension before the Battle of Bearton must have been unimaginable. Otto is facing down an army that wants to completely strip him of his crown and his birthright. And what does Liutprand record Otto doing right before the fight? Otto jumps off his horse, completely surrounded by his entire army. He falls to his knees, weeping, and desperately prays directly to the Holy Lands containing the nail of the crucifixion. He is literally begging for divine validation of his hereditary right there in front of all his troops.
And then the battle begins. During the chaotic fighting, the rebellious brother Henry is struck violently on the arm. Now, his armor holds, the metal isn't actually pierced, but beneath the armor, his skin turns completely black. And according to the historical accounts, despite all the best efforts of his doctors, this terrifying bruise never ever heals. It causes him severe pain for the rest of his life, and ultimately, his death is even attributed to it. Now, the crucial takeaway here is that this wasn't just seen as a regular battle wound. In the propaganda of the time, this was framed as undeniable, horrific, divine punishment for raising a hand against the legitimate lance-wielding king. The message was clear. God had chosen Otto. But just writing down tales of divine retribution wasn't going to be enough to secure an entire dynasty. The Ottonian emperors needed to broadcast this hereditary victory to everyone, everywhere. They needed mass media. And in the 10th and 11th centuries, mass media basically meant visual art. We're talking seals on official documents, illuminated manuscripts, and coins. They were essentially hiding their propaganda in plain sight.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the imagery of absolute power physically shifted over time. If we look back at earlier rulers, like the Carolingians, they depicted themselves holding scepters and staffs, traditional symbols of a military commander, a leader of men. But by the time we get to Otto the Great's grandson, Otto III, the imagery aggressively shifts. The supreme symbol of power becomes the Holy Lance. It wasn't just about military might anymore. It was a clear visual shorthand for divine hereditary succession.
Looking at the physical relic itself, which incredibly still exists today, by the way, the academic consensus is that it's actually a simple early Germanic lance. But if you look closely, it has this hollowed-out point in the blade. It was specifically designed so that the sacred nail of the true cross could be fastened right into the head of the weapon. You can also spot a silver band wrapped around it. This was added later on by Emperor Henry IV. And later still, a gold band was added by Charles IV. This physical object literally became the canvas upon which they painted their political legitimacy. To see just how aggressively they pushed this idea, take a look at the imperial seal, or bulla, of Emperor Otto III, created right around the year 998. The reverse side shows a female figure, identified as Roma, so the personification of the Roman Empire itself. And what exactly is she holding? A perfect, crystal-clear representation of the winged Holy Lance. Otto III was at the absolute peak of his ambition here, demanding the title of emperor directly by the will of God. Placing the lance into the hands of Rome broadcasted to the entire world that his hereditary rule was absolute and completely divinely ordained. By the early 11th century, the lance's symbolic gravity had grown so immense that it practically became more important than the crown itself. When Emperor Otto III died suddenly in Italy in 1002, Archbishop Heribert of Cologne stepped in to take charge of the body. He knew a brutal succession crisis was brewing, so what did he do? He secretly smuggled the Holy Lance ahead of the army, all the way back to Germany. He knew full well that whoever possessed the lance would have the ultimate leverage. It was the ultimate king-making tool to control the upcoming imperial election. The relic was the right to rule. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how mystical this object had become. What we're looking at are visual details from the sacramentary of Henry II, the man who ultimately won that massive succession crisis of 1002. In his official art, he isn't just holding a weapon. The illustration shows Christ directly crowning the emperor from heaven. Angels are physically handing him a sword and the Holy Lance. And just look at the lance itself. It's wrapped in mystical garlands, practically vibrating with divine power. It had been completely elevated from a simple spear into a mystical staff of divine approval, almost like the staff of Aaron from the Bible. Now, this wasn't an accident. It was a highly calculated artistic formula. The historical study explicitly compares Henry II's sacramentary to the Byzantine Psalter of Basil II. Both rulers were using exact parallel imagery: Christ above, angels delivering weapons of power below, enemies being crushed at their feet. Henry II was deliberately mirroring the visual language of the incredibly mighty Byzantine Empire to visually demand that his rule, which, remember, was heavily contested at the time, was entirely legitimate and untouchable under God's grace. Which brings us to the final and probably most undeniable piece of visual evidence: the money right in people's pockets. The history uncovers 11th century coins that feature a really stunning image. It shows two emperors side by side facing forward. And right between them, separating them but also connecting them, is the Holy Lance. It acts as the literal physical bridge of power. This fully cemented the lance as the ultimate symbol of transferred authority. It proved to every single peasant and merchant who held that coin that the right to rule flowed straight down through the bloodline, completely validated by the sacred spear. From outright extortion and sibling warfare to tales of divine retribution and mass-produced coins, the Holy Lance was the ultimate political machine of the Middle Ages. It allowed an entire dynasty to bypass the church's demands for an elected monarch and cement their own hereditary bloodline as God's chosen rulers. It really makes you wonder, as we leave the 10th century behind, what modern symbols of power do politicians use today to manufacture their own legitimacy? What are the holy lances of our time, hiding right in plain sight? Think about that and keep questioning the symbols around you.